You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. My name's Joe George. You find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92, on Instagram and TikTok at JoeGeorgeRadio. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as we go live after every single Bulls game, no matter win or lose, mostly losses this season. Every single Cubs game, Bears game, and Notre Dame football game, including their upcoming playoff game against the University of Georgia. So the Bulls lose 123-98 to the Boston Celtics. It was fun to beat the Boston Celtics in the last game. This game was much, much different. Now, look, the Bulls started well. We'll talk about how they were just so outmatched, specifically by Jayson Tatum, but really by Boston as a whole. Starting late in the second quarter, we're going to talk about these struggles that we're seeing from Coby and Modest in this game, this season, this really recent stretch of games, and Lonzo Ball as well. He's not been great. And Billy Donovan finally did something when it, not for long, but he finally did something that I've been asking for, Stacey King's been asking for all season long. Not that it really mattered in the end, but it was nice to see a little bit of an adjustment, and hopefully we'll see more of it going forward, at least while Nikola Vucevic and Jalen Smith are both on the team together. So let's talk about this game tonight. The Bulls lose 123-98. They moved to 13-16 on the season. They came into this game beating Boston on a 3-game win streak. And look, the start of this game, look, it's 28-28 at the end of the first quarter, right? Like the Bulls are going kind of shot for shot. Both teams are not really playing great basketball at the start of this game. Like some of the shooting struggles that were there in the previous game are really kind of continuing for both teams. You're just not seeing it. You could feel Boston, though, was shooting better, though, right? Like they weren't as efficient as they normally are, but this is a team who shoots so many threes, and right away it did feel like they were off to a better start in this game than than the other night's game. But the Bulls, like, they hung tough. They played well in the first quarter. They played well into the second quarter. It was back and forth. It was really, marginal leads for both sides at this point in the game. And then all of a sudden, I looked down, I looked up, and Boston Celtics were up by 10 points. And really from there, they took off. And the Bulls had a couple opportunities, to kind of get this thing back to within reason in the third quarter. Zach LaVine hits a 3 to get him back within 4. And then very quickly, Boston was up by 12 again. And eventually, they just ran away with it. And really what happened for me tonight was that the Bulls were just outmatched. They were outclassed. This is the reality of what the Boston Celtics are, what you are as a basketball team. Boston was far superior in the paint. They outscored the Bulls. Let's see what the final tally ended up being in this game. They outscored the Bulls in the paint 60-38. So while they're not on their best shooting, they're only shooting 33%. Hell, both teams shot 33.3% from the three-point line. Boston went 15-45. The Bulls went 14-42. So both teams were absolutely terrible again from the three-point line. But Boston, they pivoted. They started to attack the paint. That's been a huge problem for the Bulls this year. It's a roster construction thing. It's not necessarily just the quality of defense thing that's happening, but they're just poorly constructed inside the paint when you're seeing guys like Julian Phillips time and time again get matched up with 7-footers in the post. Like, you got no prayer when that's going to happen. So Boston attacked the paint tonight, and they got a lot of second chance opportunities, way more than the Bulls. They outscored the Bulls significantly in second chance points as well. So they just took advantage of these moments for tonight's game. And it's just why they are the far superior basketball team, because we've seen this all year. Like, this is a common occurrence for the Bulls, is that when they shoot well, it feels like the other team usually shoots pretty well. And when they shoot poorly, it feels like a lot of times the other team shoots poorly as well. But they still end up losing these games by these wide margins because they struggle to do anything in the paint, like defensively. They're just not capable of, facing a huge lineup and really being able to go toe-to-toe with them. And even offensively, like on the other end, they're struggling. This is where, Vooch is not going to have his massive games that we've seen him have this year. We're not seeing Io not being able to be aggressive going to the lane. Like, you think back to the last game, Io's kind of quiet, and then in the fourth quarter, Kristaps Porzingis comes off the court, and Io starts attacking immediately and has 9 points pretty much right away in the fourth quarter, and he's absolutely just playing his ass off. But tonight, he's not able to do that because of the matchup. Zach LaVine's not really attacking the basket, and this is where the style of basketball for the Bulls versus the style of basketball versus the Celtics, while it's so similar, it's also just so different because they pivot. Like, they can pivot. they do pivot and they move away from things that aren't working. And when both teams are struggling, Boston had an answer for it, and the Bulls didn't. Well, part of the reason why Boston had the answer tonight is because Jayson Tatum did something that hasn't been done since Larry Bird wore a Boston Celtics uniform. The first Boston Celtics player to hit a triple-double, a 40-point triple-double since Larry Bird. Incredible. Like all season long, it feels like we're having these stats, these moments in Bulls games where like they're just on these kind of record-setting things that are happening. Jayson Tatum has a season-high points in this one with 43, and he was just absolutely dominant. The Bulls are obviously, they're not going to be the only team with no answer for Jayson Tatum. He's one of the best young players in the NBA. Like they're the NBA champions for a reason. And you just kind of see really as you're watching this game develop, and while it's close for a while into the second quarter, and while the Bulls have a chance in the third, we just kind of are in the reality of what the Bulls are this year, and that's a slightly below 500 basketball team as long as all these pieces are here, and they're a play-in playoff team at the moment, and that's as long as Vooch and LaVine are on this roster, which I don't think is going to be for much longer. Like when you start getting reports like we got from Casey Johnson about guys the Bulls are not willing to take back in trades from the Denver Nuggets for Zach LaVine, feels like these trade talks, that means those are pretty far along. But Jayson Tatum was incredible tonight. Like this is one of the best games I've seen him play. He was just from the three-point line, going to the paint defensively. Like he just kind of did everything for you. And the Bulls, we love when Zach LaVine plays Superman, but didn't really get that from him tonight. He did start the game early, hot, but Zach LaVine himself only ends up with 14 points in this game on 11 shots. And a night like tonight, when Boston is kind of running away with this game, you need them to have more success early on. And even look back to the early parts of this game. You kind of just look at the big three guys of these two teams. Let's see what it ended up being. At the end of the first half, the Bulls are down 7. LaVine, Patrick Williams, and Vooch have a combined 30 points. Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis have a combined 43 points. And you're only down 7, but their three best players versus your three best players are really just, it's a total mismatch, and that's what we saw in tonight's game. There's not many things to be super upset about, because just this is Bulls basketball. This is where you're at this season, that you're not going to have the firepower to go against Jayson Tatum when he's dropping 43 points in a triple-double. When, Jaylen Brown, they're getting buckets at ease inside the paint. You guys they just don't have those guys defensively. And it also doesn't help that I maybe, people in the chat can let me know if I'm wrong on this, because I wanted to stop counting, but I believe in the first half they had 3 air balls. And then they had another 3 that was just an absolute brick, and it's coming from various different guys. So it's not that they're just not shooting well tonight, but they are embarrassingly shooting bad in this performance against the Boston Celtics. So the Bulls lose 123-98. Not surprising that, playing the Boston Celtics in back-to-back games, you're not going to beat them twice. Honestly, it's a good thing you beat them once. Like that's one of those where I hate to be moral victory guy, but where we're at with Chicago sports, with how everyone's so terrible right now across the board, this is kind of a moral victory, winning 1 out of 2 games against the Boston Celtics. I guess it's not a total moral victory because you actually did win one of them. Let's talk about these struggles, though. We've seen tonight again, and have been a pattern of things from the Bulls. 2 guys, really 3 guys specifically: Coby White, Modest Buzelis, and Lonzo Ball. They all tell a little bit of a different story, I think, for what is going on with the Bulls right now, but we got to kind of look at just what's going on in tonight's game, because, 2 of those air balls are very terrible threes came from Coby White and Modest Buzelis. So we'll get into the next here on the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Let's talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money and on sports action, with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Make your holidays bigger and better with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. For me, Sunday, Bears, Lions, I'm looking at that game. I'm looking at more passing yards for Jared Goff with the injury to David Montgomery. I'm going to more 1.5 passing or rushing or receiving touchdowns for Jameer Gibbs. I'm going to go less passing yards for Caleb Williams. He has been struggling for sure. So that's what I'm looking at for this Sunday's Bears-Lions game and for Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 off or $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's show is also brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence, take control in the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing at your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at a lower cost than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor's visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you can get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's rocketrx.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. So really, since Coby White has returned, and I think this continued in tonight's game in the loss versus the Boston Celtics, and something we've mentioned a couple times here on these postcast shows, because it's been really obvious to those of us, all of us watching these games right now, that Coby White is just not playing his best basketball. We're also seeing Modest Buzelis, I think really specifically for him, since kind of the weird time off around the NBA Cup, when they added those two games, the Hornets game and the other one, where like we kind of saw his dip in production a little bit. And Lonzo has not been great himself since he returned from the wrist injury. And the reality is I think obviously Modest is going to be on this team, and I think Coby's going to be on this team post-deadline. I would be surprised if Coby White was traded. We haven't heard his name in rumors. I do think that like everyone at this point has to be on the table besides Modest Buzelis. So it's possible, but I would assume Coby White will be here. I do think the Bulls will try to trade Lonzo Ball, who I think has not been spectacular, in terms of shooting the basketball since his return from his wrist injury. Now, Lonzo's been great defensively. Like, he continues to have moments in every single game where he's just, like, there was one helping out on a closing out on a double team and forcing the ball out of bounds. The attempted bounce pass dunk to Zach LaVine would have been the nastiest highlight we've seen since the Derrick Rose era. I know they've got some good ones in their bag too, Lonzo and Zach LaVine, but if they would have hit that, that might have been the play of the season, honestly, for the Chicago Bulls. I don't know what would have beaten that. It was a sick idea. I cannot imagine what's going through a coach like Billy Donovan's mind when he's seen something like that transpire. But these three guys, I think specifically, have really just been struggling. If you look at, the last 10 games for Coby White, we'll start there. He's shooting 36% from the field, 31% from the three-point line. He's averaging 15.3 points per game in the last 10 days, so that's in the last 8 games played. This game, he was 25% from the three-point line, so still just really, really struggling. And look, he's at 36% for the season, so that's where you can tell, like, there's this really clear drop-off. In the 2 games played versus Boston, these last 2, he shot 16%. Like, that's where Coby White is at from the three-point line. He's really just not been a good basketball player, in recent from this season. And he honestly just continues to be the number one guy for me that does stuff that absolutely infuriates me. And there was a specific moment in this game where like the Bulls are still in it. So it's 66-59. The Bulls are down by 7. Vooch gets the ball in the post. He hits a little layup in. It's 66-51. They play really good defense. They get the ball back. They've got numbers in transition. And then Coby White does one of his patented, take a three for no reason. Instead of slowing down a little bit, just jacks up a 3. It doesn't go in. And that goes back to these numbers. He's just not performing well from the three-point line. And that is immediately followed by back-to-back three-pointers by the Boston Celtics. And it's 72-62. So if Coby White hits that 3, it's 66-64. All of a sudden, it's 72-62 because they got one free throw in there. And the Bulls, that's kind of the point where like it felt like this game was kind of out of reach. And I'm not saying that this game is on Coby White or it's all his fault that the Bulls lost this game. But I just think it speaks to like what's going on with him and the struggles that we're seeing on the court since he returned from his injury. And specifically, I mean, look, even tonight, like, he's out of the game in less than 2 minutes. I think it was like 10 minutes and 18 seconds left to go in the first quarter because he's got 2 fouls. And when he got taken out, it was because he airballed the three-pointer. So, like, he airballs the three. He already collected 2 fouls. And Lonzo Ball is having to come in less than 2 minutes. And, look, that's a guy who's still on a minutes restriction. So the last thing that Billy Donovan wants to do is put Lonzo Ball on the court in that moment. And he's having to because Coby was just struggling on defense and getting those fouls. And that's kind of been something that's been popping up a little bit. So it's not like it's a lack of effort, I would say, from Coby White. It's definitely not that. He's just not shooting the ball really well, and he'll get out of it at some point. Like, he will have a game soon, I'm sure. Well, he will go off again, and he will start to just play better overall basketball. Like, we all know that he's capable of, but I just think he's been really struggling. And, look at these last 2 games kind of as a big picture, and then kind of going back to just like the last 10 days or so overall. He's just not been playing great, and it really does. It is the most frustrating thing for. I feel like I'm going to keep saying this, but like when you look at what's going on with the NBA and the way the style of basketball is being played, like I think it is those possessions with Coby White that infuriate me the most across the league is when, you've got a chance to, you get a bucket, you get good defense, and then you jack up a 3 when you have numbers instead of setting up your offense and actually just like running the play. Instead, like you brick that 3 and Boston turns that in to 2 quick threes, and all of a sudden you're down by 10 points. Instead of being down by 3 or 2, if you just have potentially a better offensive possession. So he's been struggling a lot. I think, and Modest Buzelis has not been, like, he's been up and down. Like, this is one where it's obviously going to be different in the context of the way that we talk about both Coby White and Lonzo Ball here, about like their struggles offensively. Like, Modest is going to be a roller coaster. He missed the dunk tonight. It would have been a sick play. I think we saw like 3 or 4 of those in this game too, besides just the air balls and the absolute like really ugly missed threes from the Bulls tonight. But Modest, misses that dunk, and he hasn't been great in his last 10 games played. Okay, he's averaging 7 points, 7.4 points. He's shooting 34% from the 3-point line. Now that's where he's been at this entire season. So like it's on par technically, but I think we all can use our eyeballs too and say like on a night like tonight where he ended up with an okay point total, he wasn't great. He shot 25% from the 3-point line. 35% overall, and he didn't really impact the game in some of the ways that we've seen Modest impact it early on defensively. So, he's just like struggling a little bit. Like, once again, like it's nothing of like to be concerned or whatever. Like, it's typical rookie struggles. It really feels like you got a guy coming off an injury, really 2 guys in this segment we're talking about coming off an injury, and then Modest, who's, a rookie. Like, I'm not going to beat up on these guys too much, but in a loss like tonight where you're just completely outclassed by the Boston Celtics, I think there are guys you have to look at and just say like they've been struggling to play great basketball. Now Lonzo Ball on the opposite end of this, he's really playing really good team basketball. Like it still feels so different when he comes into a game. Like the pace in which the Bulls play, the effort in which is out there defensively is still so positive. But he's not been great since he returned, from his injury. He's shooting 28%. From the 3-point line in his last 8 games played, 5.8 points per game, 31% overall from the field. He shot 10% in these 2 games from the 3-point line. So Lonzo has really struggled to find his rhythm, but the positive with him, and that's where I kind of feel like it does just differ a little bit with what's going on with Coby specifically, is that what Lonzo, doesn't give you on offense right now, he does make up for a lot of it defensively. And it's still something that as long as he's on the Bulls, I hope that can kind of translate to some of these young guys, because he's like, it's very clear like what he can bring as a leader for the Chicago Bulls this season, forever, as long as he is a member of this team. And he's really the one where when you get, you're talking trade deadline, like he didn't play basketball for like 1,000 days. Like I'm fascinated to see like what the trade market actually could be for a guy like Lonzo Ball. So like those are 3 guys who are just struggling, and the Bulls were just not good tonight as a team. Like it was close for a while, and then they just got absolutely boat race. So I hate to beat up on those 3 guys, and don't feel like I've been too harsh, when talking about them here. But Coby White specifically is the one where they really need him to get going, as long as this iteration of the Bulls exists. And honestly, more importantly, I think when it doesn't exist, like when this team doesn't have Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic on it, like you need Coby White for the foreseeable future, step into a more comfortable, better role. And then the IO too. Like, we're still seeing a lot of struggles from him from the 3-point line. Teams are not worried about, letting him take threes, and he's not making them pay. And that will be something that hopefully improves throughout his career. And he's still shooting, I think, a career low in 3-point percentage this season. So it's been tough. It's been a tough road for a lot of these guys this season. 13-16 on the year. It definitely could be worse. But you beat a team like Boston once, and then you lose a night like tonight where, Jayson Tatum gets the first three, or first 40-point triple-double since Larry Bird. It's tough to always feel like on the other end of that kind of, not history-making stuff, but significant basketball moments like the Bulls have been on this season. So Billy Donovan finally did something that Stacey King started talking about, I think, in Game 1 of the season versus the Pelicans, something that I've agreed with, specifically on a night like tonight when you play the Boston Celtics. We finally saw it even for just a couple of minutes, something I hope that we're going to see more of next. So we'll talk about that in the final segment of the show here on the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've been telling you guys for a while that this is a leg up that FanDuel is giving you that a lot of other betting sites do not, or sports books do not give you, to be able to have everything at your fingertips, to make an informed bet on the same page where you place your bets. It just streamlines the whole entire process for you. So just visit FanDuel.com today to join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's $150 that FanDuel is giving you for just placing, and winning your first $5 bet. So make a smart bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Couple funny notes here. Not even just funny, like couple notes here from the post-game press conference. Cody Westerland of the Score is tweeting these out right now. So kind of bounce off the last segment. So one of them is more funny, one of them is not. But just to kind of go off the Coby White thing that we were just talking about. He hasn't shot above 40% in a game since November 26th. It's December 21st. That's tough. But Billy Donovan emphasized in the post-game press conference that he has the utmost confidence in Coby White. Like I said, I'm with him. I think that he will get out of the shooting slump. And doesn't, he also said that he doesn't think anything is particular that is causing Coby White to be that off. The other one that was a little funny, and this is kind of the reaction that I assumed, but the quote when asked about the bounce pass from Lonzo Ball to Zach LaVine for the alley-oop that, like I said, would have been the best highlight of the Bulls season, maybe of the last 5 years, honestly. And I can't even think what would have comped to a moment like that. Billy Donovan said, quote, "I was not happy about it. Not surprised. I probably wouldn't be either if I was the head coach of the Chicago Bulls." For the first time this season, we saw Billy Donovan put Jalen Smith and Nikola Vucevic on the court at the same time tonight. So I've been waiting for this to see if they would ever roll it out, and it was very limited in the way they did against Boston. It makes sense. You think Boston, Orlando, Cleveland, those are the teams this season that you would think, okay, if you're ever going to put Vooch and Jalen Smith on the court at the same time, this is a game tonight where, Boston is so much more superior than you that, in the paint that you would make that change. My problem with the change, is the process and the timing of which they got it. The game was over. The Boston Celtics outscored again tonight, just to remind people, if you didn't see the stats, pull them up here. But the Bulls were outscored 60-38 points in the paint. You couldn't shoot the ball well. You're shooting 33% from the three-point line. Jalen Smith and Vooch both can shoot threes, so it's not like you're losing shooting by taking Patrick Williams or someone else off the court. But just why does it take so long to try something this different? This has been a problem all year long for the Bulls, where they have struggled in the paint defensively. And Patrick Williams and Vooch, clearly it just doesn't get it done. And when it's Jalen Smith and Julian Phillips guarding guys in the post when the bench is in, it's even worse, obviously. But Jalen's a fine defender, and Vooch is a fine defender. I think, obviously, Jalen's better than Vooch, I would say. I think it's pretty obvious. But like, why are they waiting till that point in the game? I think it was either late in the third or early in the fourth quarter. Like, we weren't far away from garbage time when this finally happened. So I just want to, I'm like glad that like the idea has like crossed from like talking point to semi action. But this is just something that, like, as the Bulls are constructed for now, like, they're getting killed in the paint. And I don't understand why Jalen and Vooch are not on the court together more often, specifically when you play a team like Boston that's not shooting the ball and all their success is happening inside the paint. There's no reason why it should not be tried more, why it shouldn't be tried more often. And, I mean, Billy Donovan goes to the zone more than he does. Like, he went to the zone again tonight. Like, we've seen the Bulls be terrible, and they're awful at it. They are awful at running a zone. So I wish we just would see it more, and I wish we would see it earlier in games in which it's obvious a team is not shooting the ball well, and they're going to attack you in the paint. Like, I don't understand why Billy Donovan seems so hesitant to try something different. And I know he has this rotation, and he's sticking to it and everything. I get it. But, like, we see when these injuries come out, like, he's creative with his rotation. So I would like to see them try to change things up a little bit. We also were told that Patrick Williams and Modest Buzelis were going to be playing minutes together. That was before Josh Giddey got hurt, so like maybe that's on the back burner for now. But I just wonder like what the idea of, like, is there a Jalen Smith and Vooch rotation where they're on the court together more, and then Patrick Williams and Modest Buzelis are on the court together more, and it's two different styles of big men like you throwing at people. Like, maybe that would work. Like, maybe it would just help the Bulls not get crushed in the paint like they're getting crushed on a night like this as they lost to the Boston Celtics 123-98 to move to 13-16 on the season. So that will do it for this episode of the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel, the Locked On Bulls postcast here. Reminder to hit that subscribe button to Locked On Sports Chicago as well. The Locked On Bulls on YouTube. He's doing great content 5 days a week, pumping out Bulls stuff, especially everything around the trade deadline. He's crushing it with all the rumors and everything going on. So make sure you find Locked On Bulls on YouTube as well, anywhere you get your podcast, because we drop our audio there as well. Spotify, Apple, find Locked On Bulls, and all those places. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. If you're watching us live or if you're catching the video after, just a reminder, we'll be live after the Bears-Lions game on Sunday as well. So we'll talk to you tomorrow for another postcast, Bears-Lions, and for the next Bulls game as well. So thank you for watching, and peace.